Speak No Evil is a very unsettling movie about a Danish family visiting a Dutch family they met on a holiday. What was supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unraveling as the Danes try to stay polite in the face of unpleasantness. So this is a movie I discovered about a year ago and I just recently revisited it. I think that I have some more refined opinions about it than I did when I originally reviewed it, and I think that the quality of the review would probably be improved by revisiting it now. Because this is a very odd movie, and it's a very frustrating movie. What makes it so effective is that it's able to do so many small social faux pas, small uncomfortable interactions that can be very relatable. And then in the face of staying polite, you suck it up, ignore it, or pretend that it isn't as big of a deal as it is. And this movie takes this to the most uncomfortable degree while also to the most frustrating degree because the Danish family tolerate way too much. You get very frustrated, especially with the father, Bjorn, because he shows such a lack of will to protect his family that you get angry at him for what he basically allows this other family to do to his family. And that's where a lot of the tension from it comes, is just these interactions, these small things that eventually get to be bigger things. And this is what happens with people that you know that test boundaries. They start out small, they end up getting bigger, and then they start to really test things and see where your limit is and how much you will tolerate before you snap. And this movie is a big exercise in that, and because it's so unflinching about the consequences of that, it really drives its point home. I could see how a lot of people would be frustrated because a lot of normal people wouldn't tolerate the amount that the Danish family tolerate. It gets ridiculous, the amount that they allow, the amount that they get submissive to this kind of intolerable behavior. It gets to a certain degree cartoonish, but it just captivates you because at the same time it's a bit of an intentional decision. Some of it is a little bit that Bjorn is so afraid to offend anybody, but also because he is so complacent and completely fine with being walked all over. There are many times where the family could get out. There's many times where it feels like there are opportunities to escape or just cut ties with the situation, where in real life it would have been perfectly normal to do it at that point, if not way earlier. But they show through character how a man like this would allow such craziness to just keep going, and I think that that's some of the point of the movie. The ridiculousness of the situation gets completely out of hand, and because of Bjorn's tolerance, because he allowed things to happen, that's why the behavior continues to persist. This movie really shows you the worst of people, and it really makes you reevaluate how much you allow, how much you tolerate, and how much you accept because you're afraid to offend somebody or be perceived as impolite, when in reality they're the ones pushing boundaries. And this really is a cautionary tale about this. It's 100% about how we're willing to let things slide because of a thin veneer of politeness and social security. And it heightens it too, to a degree that it really gets the highest amount of emotion out of you. They do so many things, cross so many boundaries, and they touch certain subjects that a lot of horror movies aren't willing to touch. And because of that, it really leaves you in a very unsettled place. And the movie really makes you think about whether you tolerate too much, whether you allow too much to go on, and that you keep a poker face on because you're afraid to violate some sort of social code. All the performances are really good. They really sell their parts, especially the guy who plays Patrick, because he has a weird playful side to him, and then you have this other side of him that turns on a dime and gets very vicious and cold, cruel out of nowhere. They really got the best performance that they could have out of this guy. And part of what concerns me about the American remake, which I didn't know was happening at the time that I made my first video, is that it's going to be more flinching. It's going to be more sanitized. I love Blumhouse, but I'm afraid that they're going to make it a PG-13 horror movie, and that they might shy away from the very bleak nature of what happens in this story. And I think too that if they don't fully follow through with what they did in this movie, it's going to completely miss the point, because the whole point of this movie is the consequences of allowing this continued pushing of boundaries. I don't expect it to be as original. I don't expect it to be as fresh as the first movie. It's kind of hard to do that, but I hope that they find a way to kind of emphasize that and really bring that point home I'm just not sure that they're going to be as willing to go as far as this movie did, because it can be a very brutal watch. It can be a hard to watch movie, and if it's not done right, it could really screw up the quality of the movie. But as for this one, it's very intense, it's very heart-wrenching, it's very gut-wrenching. It's one of those movies where you want to yell at the screen because every possible wrong decision that could be made is going to be made, and then it's also just the weirdness of the situations presented. They ride the fine line of some of it was acceptable, what is not, and it's all these things that build up and coincide. And then part of the frustration too is because they don't say anything, it allows the Dutch family to kind of have an air of cluelessness, because they could say, hey, why didn't you ever say anything? I didn't know you were bothered by this. They play it off as insensitivity when it's clearly something a lot more than that, a lot more sinister. They also institute a good amount of plot twists, misdirections, things that, I didn't see coming the first time that I saw this movie, but it plays in such an effective way where you really see how deep-rooted this whole thing goes and how these social experiments kind of shine a light on how fragile civility really is. I think it's a really effective movie, and I definitely would say that it holds up very well on a rewatch. I've still really enjoyed it, but to a degree that you can enjoy a movie like this. This is a very intense movie, and to a degree it's unpleasant to watch, but it's very engaging, and I definitely recommend it for most horror fans. Definitely one of the best horror movies to come out in the last few years. I think that it's going to go down as one of the best of the decade. Because of that, I can't recommend it enough. But that's just kind of my thoughts revisiting Speak No Evil. Let me know what you guys think of this movie in the comments section. Have you seen it before? Are you going to give it a chance now? Let me know. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.